Kevin, you're up first. What would you change about Big Ten football?
I think that I would probably go away from 9 conference games until every other conference, at least in the Power 5, gets to that level. Why should you punish yourself with 9 conference games and go over and above what the SEC and the ACC are doing, who seem to be the power brokers right now in terms of winning the championships? I understand the reasoning of you have a conference and you want to play your conference foes more, but you have the Big Ten not playing FCS teams. You have them playing 9 league games. I think they're handicapping themselves right out of the gate with their scheduling practices. I think they need to take a long, hard look at it and make some decisions. I think that once the grant of rights comes up here in 2023 or whatever it is, we're going to see a major change with how Division I football is going to be set up. That's maybe for another time, another place. But, in the immediate, with a new commissioner coming in, I really think they need to look at their scheduling practices.
Jamie Strawn on the live chat says, kick Rutgers out. Yeah, that's
you've got the New York footprint now and the ratings. That helps the ratings, right?
Right. Of course it does. There are so many Rutgers fans there in New York City. They just can't get enough of Rutgers football. Tony, what do you think?
I'm with Kevin. That the 8-game, go back to an 8-game schedule is really the biggest change. I think the easiest change that could be made, because there's no reason to make it harder on yourself than you need to, because you don't get rewarded for it. To maybe go along those lines, the conference could do more to help the teams with their scheduling. You look at what the SEC does. The SEC does it, the week before rivalry week, where they just clear the decks, clear the schedule, let them do whatever they want. Whereas you've got Ohio State, who is usually playing Michigan State or Penn State the week before Michigan. Like, I think 5 of the last 10 years or 6 of the last 10 years, it's been one of those 2 teams, and half the time it's on the road. So the Big Ten doesn't really do as much as they could to help Ohio State, to help Michigan, to help the teams that could get to the playoffs. They don't really do much to help them get there. Whereas the SEC does seemingly whatever they can. I looked up some stats a couple of weeks ago, and I think like the last time Alabama played a conference opponent the week before Auburn was maybe 2007, 2008, maybe even before Nick Saban got there, or the year he got there, 2007 or so. So there's not a lot that I think the Big Ten is doing really well. They cash big fat checks, but the scheduling and doing more to help the teams that are the cause of those big checks, helping them get to the playoffs in terms of just not making it more difficult than it needs to be.
I was ranting and raving the other night, as I do at times, about scheduling, about SEC teams not traveling. I looked it up. The last time Florida, the University of Florida's football team, played outside the state in a non-conference game was, take a guess at the year.
Is it 1980 Memphis?
1991, they went to Syracuse and they lost. And so that scared them from ever going on the road again outside the state of Florida, except to, of course, play Florida State in the state of Florida. Steve, what do you think? How are you going to fix the Big Ten? And before I get to you, Steve, of course, Tony, that game that would have been eliminated, Kevin and Tony, for Ohio State the last 2 years would have been the Purdue game and the Iowa game. In reducing to the 8-game schedule, of course, those were the specific games that would have been taken off the schedule.
Well, it would have been a Western Division game, but we don't know in particular which one it was going to be. I mean, that's what people have argued that with me, and I'm like, it could have been the other one. You don't know.
I know.
At any rate, I'm going to go point counterpoint. There's already enough filler on the schedules when you're talking about playing Florida Atlantic and Miami. You don't need to do away with, a Big Ten opponent to add another Florida Atlantic or Miami or Tulane or some other non-entity that no one wants to go to. So The Rutgers game last year, as an example, it was like the second game of the season. They played Oregon State, and then it was Rutgers. Yeah, it was Rutgers, but it was a Big Ten game, So I know quasi Big Ten, not a great opponent, but I don't know. It's a hard sell getting people to be excited. I think when you have a $200 million budget or whatever Ohio State has, and some small bit of it comes from the Big Ten Network having that television package, the ninth game creates a little bit of an inventory for the Big Ten Network and the television partners to have maybe something that's a little bit more watchable than Ohio State versus Tulane. It certainly has more meaning than playing Tulane because it's a Big Ten game. Obviously, it's not a losable Big Ten game, but it's a Big Ten game nonetheless. I think if I had to fix one thing with college football, and I'll just run this real quick, is I would go to 8 teams. I would take it back to 11 games. I would keep the conference championship games the week before Thanksgiving, and then go right in Thanksgiving weekend, or the weekend after. I'm getting my weekends confused with the round of 8 at the top 4 seeds, and then you set your bowl lineup accordingly after that, just as we are doing now with your Final Four. At first Sunday in December, you'll know who the Final Four are and set all the other bowl games up. You don't penalize people who lost the playoff game. They still get whatever bowl they were going to go to had they not made the top 8, and let it go like that. I think if you do that, there'll be enough money in there that you can do away with that 12th game, in my opinion. Plus, it would add some sanity, I think, for the student athletes a little bit.
Oh, Claire.
Okay.
fix the Big Ten.
This is my big idea for the Big Ten. And it's not quite as much X's and O's in really true to my form. But I think the Big Ten, because it's such an established conference, the majority of the teams in the Big Ten have been around the longest, right? It's the cradle of college football. I think the Big Ten needs to do a better job of actually campaigning for the strength of the Big Ten. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, and how in the SEC, when the teams cannibalize each other, it's because it's the strength of the SEC, it's the size of the SEC, it's the speed of the SEC. I got to tell you, these kids are coming from all over the country to play at these different schools. Just because he came to Penn State doesn't mean he's all of a sudden going to take 5 seconds off his 40 time, or vice versa. So the Big Ten, and why I say this, and it's not just a PR move, it's because they've taken strength of schedule out of this whole formula, right? So you have to campaign for your wins, that they are better quality wins in the eyes of the voters. And Urban used to do it. Urban used to say, oh, this team was we beat a good team today, or we're facing a good team. And part of that is just psychology, to make sure that his guys aren't, not flat when they come out against a Tulane. But part of it is to make sure that he's campaigning for the Big Ten and making these wins look like better quality wins than they are. And you're going to outsmart some of those voters, and you're not going to outsmart some of those voters. But truly, this is it's a hat on a hat. These are the same kids that are getting recruited all over the nation. And no matter what you think about certain teams within the conference and how top heavy it is or how top heavy it isn't, you've got to campaign for your conference.
I've got an angel and I've got a devil on my shoulder right now. Should I argue with Claire?
Absolutely. Yes.
Should I beat her down a little bit, or should I support her?
No.
Okay, I'm going to be supportive here, Claire. It brings to mind the story that Urban Meyer gathered his team at lunch of the day of the Alabama game, and I'm guessing between these 4 minds in front of me right now, you'll recollect this story better than I do. But basically, he saw that Wisconsin, the team that they just rampaged 59-0, was beating Auburn in the Outback Bowl, with Melvin Gordon running all over the Auburn defense, an Auburn team that took Alabama within 1 score. And then he saw Michigan State against a Baylor team that was supposed to be just so good and so fast, and too fast for a Big Ten team, came back and beat them 42-41, that he was basically shaking up his team saying, we can play with Alabama.
Agreed. That was kind of a water splash to the face moment that that the glass ceiling had been kind of shattered, in my opinion, and was a psychological boost, I think, for the Big Ten as a whole. Not that they've taken full advantage of it, but yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it.
And so the fix to the scheduling, of course, is to put the scheduling, take it out of the hands of the individual programs and give it to the Voice of College Football Playoff and Scheduling Committee. And what we do with it, Kevin, I'm getting rolls of eyes and so forth because they probably heard this like 18 times. But Kevin, what we do with the schedule is that we give it to a committee that just doesn't do haphazardly whatever they want. They got to stay within a metric and guidelines. And the number one guideline is that, let's say we do have 9 conference games for every conference in the country. Therefore, you schedule 3 other games. I allow all the schools to go schedule your lower division group of 5 or your FCS school. I am scheduling 2 games for you. So you have no control over your schedule, and you are scheduling 2 Power 5 teams that you're playing. And the one criteria number 1, is that the composite record of those 2 teams the previous season in conference is 500. So everyone is playing a 500 composite Power 5 schedule, non-conference that season.
12 people in Grapevine can't even get the playoff right. You think that
this is my committee working on this, Kevin. We'll get it straight.
Ohio State plays at Hawaii every year.
Hey, I like it.
I would like to get rid of neutral site games. Just keep everything on campus. I'm tired of the way the SEC does that. Yeah, I did like going to Jerry World. I always do, but I would rather have those 2 games on campus against the TCU Ohio State. You know, obviously that was just a 1-game series after that they had to back out. But I'm done with the neutral site stuff. To me, it's a coward's way out.
What was that neutral site game? It was against Miami and New Jersey. It would have been 90.
The kickoff classic.
Oh, 1999.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was just
that was great, wasn't
it? There was the kickoff classic against Alabama in 1986.
That didn't go well either.
Nope. So
Alabama plays those every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We appreciate the time. You guys are amazing. Kevin, what was your last point? We missed it. I was talking right over you.
Alabama may play in a kickoff classic or whatever, but then they play Savannah State or Thailand or whoever the hell they went to the week before.
Thailand. I think I just saw something where the Big Ten's going to play 4 FCS opponents and the SEC is going to play like 15. Somebody is playing 2. Maybe Vanderbilt or somebody. I don't know, but maybe a team that needs it. But yeah, somebody down there in the SEC is actually playing 2 of them. So that's a feather in their cap.
Well, this is the wrong year for me to be stating this, considering Ohio State's schedule, but I know that there was a TCU issue. But considering they've got no Power 5s, Alabama's big game this year, of course, is against Duke, and last year's big game was against Louisville, one of the 3 or 4 worst Power 5 teams.
Yeah, and that Louisville game, I believe, was a neutral site.
Neutral site against Duke.
Yeah, and where are these? Like Atlanta?
Right.
Exactly. All right, everyone. Please check out the work and the Twitter pages for all these fine folks here. You got Kevin Noon joining us for the very first time on the Buckeye Grove. You got Steve Hellwagon, Big Ten senior writer for Bucknuts, 247 Sports, Tony Girdman from the Ozone, and she is simply Buckeye Claire. Claire, thanks so much for joining us as always.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone, thank you so much, and we will be back at it next Wednesday night at 9:00 Eastern.
I'll try to remember.
Or 9:20 Ish World.